All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Thanks especially to our guest today, Dr. Michael Doidge. Dr. Doidge is Director of the History Office and Chief Historian of the Air Force Test Center at Edwards Air Force Base. He received his BA in History from Rutgers, and we have some Rutgers gang in here, actually. Charles is in, and my father was a Rutgers, attended Rutgers. So big Rutgers West Coast crew here. He received his MA in Military History from Hawaii Pacific University and received his PhD in Military History from the University of Southern Mississippi. Before moving into his current position, Dr. Doidge was a historian at the U.S. Department of Defense from 2014 to 2022. And so we'll hear about that as well as overlapping with his PhD studies. He's an expert in the history of military medicine with publications on the history of joint medical policy, mental health, traumatic brain injury, suicide, post-traumatic stress disorder, epidemiology, vaccinations, and more. Some of his recent publications include Making the Modern World, Public-Private Partnerships and Advancements in Science and Technology from 1955 to 1975, Reclaiming What Was Lost in the Vietnam War, Casualties by Other Means in the Vietnam War, Can Historical Analysis Help Reduce Military Deaths by Suicide, U.S. Army Air Mobility in the Vietnam War, and what I heard most recently, zombies. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Dr. Doidge. We can talk about zombies and everything else. Thank you, Mike, for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you for having me. Just before I get started, when do you like to kind of do the Q&A? Like, how long does this session go?
We have an hour. We have a good hour. If we wrap up a little early, if we run a little long, either way, we're okay. So we have a sort of total. And I will be posting. And I also want to thank Daniela Guzman. I should have thanked you at the beginning, Daniela. Thank you for joining and recommending Dr. Doidge, a colleague of yours. So yeah, take the time you'd like for preliminary remarks, and then we can move into questions and discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, to begin with, I don't want to talk at you forever. I mean, you probably are in this session because you have questions about what it is to work in public history for the federal government, all that stuff. So I want to make certain that we basically make time for your questions, and thoughts you may have. You're welcome to ask me about me. I'm always happy to talk about my research, right? We're historians, we're egotists. We love to talk about ourselves and what we love. But the key here is to basically, help accelerate you. So I'll begin with this, which is that for those of you who know Daniela and have her cell phone, what she loves nothing more is if you text her Wookiee pictures all day long. Like, so just everything Star Wars, Wookiees all the time. Just, she loves it, especially in the middle of the night, in the morning when it could wake her up. So please do that. So a little bit about me. You've heard the background, right? Bachelor's, master's, PhD, and all that. The first kind of advice I'd have for all of you is be flexible. Realize that all roads can lead to Rome. I was a PhD historian at Southern Miss who wrote his dissertation on the U.S. Army's advocacy for itself from 1946 to 1964. You would think, right, like, okay, you wrote your dissertation. This is what a lot of us historians think. And then we go get a job, because we know that dissertation, we know that topic better than everyone. And the first job I ever got was to teach Afghanistan. And that's because they looked at me and they said, he thought about the Army from 46 to 64. So he must know modern military history, right? Like, no, they have nothing to do with each other necessarily. But it was like, okay, that's what prepped me to do it. So, that's the first thing. Then I got to that job, and that's at the U.S. Army Command General Staff College. And the first thing they did for me was they were like, okay, you're gonna talk about U.S. operations in Afghanistan. You're gonna talk about U.S. operations in Iraq. You're gonna do staff rides, which are using the battlefield as a classroom to teach. You're gonna talk about. They asked if anyone could write on gender in war. That was hysterical because one of my historian colleagues actually said, about that, like, I don't do women. And I was like, yes, you don't. So I did the historian gender and war thing. And then we had to do a digitally interactive military history, and I took the lead on that. So creativity is basically going to be one of your best friends, not only creatively thinking about where you'll apply to work, creatively thinking about how you do the work, creatively thinking about how your skill set that history has given you. And I'm presuming, am I safe in presuming that everyone here has basically got either a BA or MA in history, or is getting it?
Yes.
All right. Yeah. So thinking about like how those kinds of skills quantify you and qualify you to do the kinds of tasks in both public history and in the public sector, you want to think laterally about that kind of stuff. So don't just think about like, well, I'm a historian, right? I know the past. No, think in terms of, I know how to research, I know how to write, I know how to get data, I know how to interpret data, I know how to make an argument about it, I know how to edit, I know how to publish, I know how to advocate for a reasoned argument. I basically know how to take historical or any type of data that I'm faced with and basically say, okay, this is what it leads me to in terms of a conclusion. Okay, this is what oftentimes the federal government has to be concerned with, especially if it's not particularly associated with history. So here I'm thinking about, okay, I want to be an intel analyst. Here I want to be a research analyst, operations analyst, those kinds of positions, right? Because analysts do just that. They take data, they make sense of it, and they make an argument over the data they see. So that's probably one of the biggest takeaways from the early part of my career. I didn't come into military medicine until basically 2013. So I was already about 3 years into my field, and that's when I really truly, found myself, because I was working as the historian for the Department of Defense's Defense Health Agency, and that was an experience that basically said to me, okay, medicine is everything, right? Like that's why I loved it, is because medicine just connects us to everything. It's you can't understand head injuries in the 1960s without studying cars and highways, because that's why we actually developed that organization over at NIH, the National Institutes of Health, because people were suddenly taken to the highways and they were suddenly buying cars like you wouldn't believe. And then they were suddenly getting into accidents because seatbelts weren't a thing until the late 1960s. And so now you suddenly had head injuries, and that was what was developing the science behind it, because someone would become concussed, and then they would, say 3 days later, hey, I got into a car accident a day ago and I suddenly have a splitting headache and it hasn't gone away, And so the doctors would have to make sense of that. And that's one of the things that advanced the science of head injuries. So what we now call traumatic brain injury, but what we once called concussions. So that's why it became fascinating to me, is because it was like, okay, everything is related to everything else. And then from there, I went to the Office of Commemorations, which is what this Department of Defense stands up basically however often they need to, in order to commemorate a war. In this case, this was the Vietnam War. This is the 50th anniversary from that. And then finally, that led me to my current position, which was, Jeremy already mentioned, is the Director of History here at the Air Force Test Center at Edwards Air Force Base. I am not actually physically present at the base at the moment. I'm home. But yeah, we have basically every aircraft imaginable, and any aircraft you can imagine being tested, we have in fact tested. So broadly conceived, right, I'm a historian of U.S. history, but also broadly conceived, I'm a historian of basically U.S. Thought, medicine, science, technology, of ideas, of how do we accomplish our goals as a society, as a government, as whatever. And so what I did was I built for your professor here, I built him a list. Let me see if I can scroll on the chat. And for the record, Jeremy, I can't see anyone in the room you're in, for the record. I just have a blank screen at the moment. I don't know if that matters, but just in case someone does raise their hand or wants to talk, I can't see anyone.
Got it.
Oh, there you go. Now I'm back. Okay. So what I did was I built a list for you all, because basically, a lot of people think, okay, well, I'm going to apply to a government job, so I'm going to go to usajobs.gov. It is just ever so slightly more complicated than that, because what happens is that certain institutions in the federal government have permission to hire through what we would just call broadly direct hire authority, right? Which is that institution in particular is interested in someone and they need to vet you through their website, because they work in things like intelligence and whatnot. So hence, if you wanted to apply to the CIA, you don't go to usajobs.gov. You go to cia.gov careers, and then there's the web page. And that's a fun one too, because for any of you who don't know about this, right, if you're applying to the CIA right now, you're actually not supposed to tell anyone, to include myself, that you're applying to the CIA. So keep that in mind. FBI.gov. And then the other things here you'll see did I list NSA in there? Okay. Just so you know, Jeremy, in case I missed it, NSA has its own hiring authority as well. And I thought I put it in there and I'm not seeing it in my links. So in case it's missed, NSA has its own hiring authority.
I'll check and I'll see if I can find it.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I may have forgotten it. I apologize if I did, but they have their own, and that's cryptology. And yes, the NSA does hire historians of cryptology. But first, what it does is actually makes you an analyst, because I know a historian of cryptology who worked there. She's really funny. She looks like basically like a Harry Potter professor. So you would never think that she did what she did. She was an analyst there, started there, and then they switched her over to historian. That's actually how they work over at the NSA. So you won't get hired as a historian. You'll get hired as an analyst. You show that you can do the work, then you go study the history of people who've done the work in the past. But if you look at airforceciviliancareers.com, and you look at the naval, the Navy, the navc.navy.mil, those are direct hire authorities in Navy and Air Force, where they don't have to go through the usual authorities that USA Jobs has to go through in order to hire you, which means basically, long story short, if you put a resume in front of them and it matches a job need, they can hire you more or less on the spot. No, that doesn't typically happen that quickly, but they can hire you that way. So it's good to know about these websites for that reason. I'm going to back up now to the top of the page and you'll see the public history one. That's ncph.org/jobs. That's a great website because that's going to give you state jobs. That's going to give you county jobs. That's going to give you, so it's like all those kind of history jobs that would slip through the cracks because, you know, Bumble Nowhere County in Montana has a museum, but it's a part of the county. So therefore it's a part of local government and they're hiring and they need someone, right? Like that's why it's good to hold on to that website, because if you're able to move around, you definitely want to have your access to that. And then finally, within the federal government, we do hire in the private sector, and you'll work for us as a private, you know, part of a private company, an employee for that company. And those types of jobs you'll get from Indeed, from Monster, from Clearance, and whatnot. So a big one is Jeremy, if you want to type this, it's BOOZ. So Booz Allen Hamilton. That's a huge federal government contractor. They're personnel focused. So, you know, look them up. Look up Leidos, Leidos. Look up Deloitte, Deliotte. Like those kinds of companies, and there's so many because there's just seem endless. Those kinds of companies will hire people like yourself to go work for the federal government, and you know can pay good salary and good benefits. So if you're sitting there and you're wondering, okay, well, why, Dr. Doidge, did you go work for the government and all that jazz? You know, one, in terms of history, is the salary. So there's no point in even trying to hide this from you because you could just easily go look this up. If you looked at my pay grade and you were to say, okay, well, what does Dr. Doidge make? For a historian, I make very good money. I make somewhere between $150,000 to $200,000 a year. I get full benefits. I get time off. And my time off is segregated. So I accrue paid time off and I also accrue sick leave. Those are two different pots. I collect a pension when all said and done, like all federal employees do. So it's a good racket if you like it. And there's a lot of things we do get to do in the government. We're kind of basically the front lines of history in a way, because we get to basically see things before anyone else sees it, right? So it's that classified stuff that Jeremy was talking about. As soon as it's new, you know, it falls on us. So anything that is Air Force test right now, and so those of you who know anything about the Air Force probably know about the B-21. You probably know about, even if you've heard about the NGAD system, which is the new F-47, right? That's going to come my way. And so I'll be one of the first to basically document its history. That's pretty cool stuff. Downside of the government is that, you know, one, you don't get to dictate policy, right? You work for the commander in chief, or you work for the agency you work for, whether the leadership is what you want or not. It can be hard to absolutely get a job working for the federal government because it's its own special language. And I'll take that in the question and answer if you want to talk about that some. I've been helping Daniela with it to the best of my ability. I mean, it's an 8-hour-a-day shift, typically speaking. So it's kind of weird because it's like they expect historians to be kind of like they would do other people, like where it's like you'll just do history for 8 hours straight every day, and that's kind of not how we work. So you know, there are definitely, you know, some downsides and whatnot. But you know, I love it. I've obviously made a career out of it. I'm now more than 10 years into it. I have learned and gotten to write on a lot of creative and special things. My article on suicide has been downloaded more than 50,000 times throughout the entire globe. It's free, so you all could read it if you wanted to. It doesn't matter. It's just kind of a social sciencey article on suicide. But the best part about all of it is that it does actually inform US DoD policy. So they have based policies around what I have written on, and that's one of my pride and joys because, again, right, it's a noble mission. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell. I will wrap up because he did actually mention the thing on zombies. I do have a chapter coming out on zombies next, actually this year. It is coming out with Paul Grave Macmillan. It is in a book called The Complete Book of Zombies. I am happy to say too that my chapter was piggybacked off of the book, or sorry, on the chapter, and the chapter is about zombies in pornography. That is so freaking awesome. I can't even begin to describe to you. I told them, I said, you keep my chapter right where it is. Because before that, I was like, no one's going to read my chapter. They're going to be like, zombies in the military, who cares? But now that it's like next to that chapter, I'm getting read. So that is awesome. The key takeaway from all that is not write about porn, although write about porn if that's what you love. It's actually write about what you love. That's the key thing. Because if you write about what you love, regardless of what it is that you love, you will write better and you will have a greater chance of succeeding at it. So don't think in terms of, oh my God, I'm getting my bachelor's or my master's in history, so I need to now like write about like, I don't know, the Hegelian dialectic and all that jazz if you don't love it. It can be fascinating to write about the Hegelian dialectic if in fact you love it, but if you don't, it's going to suck. So write about things you love. And that's how I got to zombies, because I'm also fascinated by video games. That history is in my poster, Making the Modern World, which Jeremy talked about. I have an entire section on video games. Why? Because I love them, right? So just, find what is that fascinates you and do that as well. And you'd be amazed how the federal government will allow you to do that too, even as you're on the front lines of history. So that's enough talking by me in terms of just me lecturing at you all. This way we have 40 minutes for Q&A if we can actually go that long. So I'm opening it up, Jeremy, whatever you guys want to ask.
Thank you. That's great advice about writing. I as historians, we have that available to us to write about anything we want to write about. Remind me, Kurt Vonnegut gave that piece of advice as well about writing about what you care deeply about and feel other people need to care about as well. And that's a good recipe, good starting ingredients for really good writing. Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Doidge. I want to turn it over. We have a question already from Aaron, who I think has a family connection to Edwards. Is that right?
Yeah,
Aaron?
my husband's an MQ-9 test pilot out at Edwards Range.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. So that's like my everyday life is MQ-9 talk, and yeah, so love it. Yeah, so I thought about applying at Edwards about, I want to say, a year ago, right before I joined the MA program. But my husband, I showed my husband the position and he thought it was specifically made for someone, because I know that tends to happen a lot in the contracting world. So I ended up not applying. What are your recommendations for applying to Edwards as far as teaching or historian positions?
Understood. If you don't mind me asking, what was the position? Because it couldn't possibly have been historian, because I know the two that are
I think it was actually with, oh my goodness, my brain is not working. I think it was with Lockheed Martin, and it was specifically creating like educational content.
Okay.
I think that was what the position was, but I showed it to him and he's like, oh, I think that seems more like it's meant for somebody just because of how it was worded. But I'm definitely interested in working up here, and just because we live up in Phelan, so we're in the area.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband's kind of into the industry, and I
No, you're good.
Yeah,
no, you're good. You're good. No, I was more curious than anything else, because I was like, it couldn't possibly have been a history thing, because I would have known if I hired a contractor. No, I mean, I will use the Wayne Gretzky line, right? And that is 100% of the shots you never take never go in. So yeah, I too have encountered this. I actually applied for a job at James Madison University. This is before I got this job. Because I kid you not, they wanted a historian in medicine. They wanted, if the person could be a historian also of like know something about like the history of or the utility of video games in history.
Okay.
And I was like, all right, I have a PhD. I just published on video games. I publish on medicine all the time.
And women's health medicine is my, like, that's my thesis. That's what I'm working on currently. Like, that's my love is women's health history. So
Fair enough. Then we should definitely make sure you get my email at some point here.
awesome.
Long and short of it, though, never even got interviewed. And I was like, are you kidding me? That was a pocket job. That was someone that was written for the person that, you know, was supposed to get that job, and they hired that person. And that person actually ended up friending me on LinkedIn. And I was like, okay, fair enough. Like, so, you know, I know who it is now and everything. So that can happen. However,
Right.
in the contracting world, no, we cannot. And I mean this so sincerely. So there's apologies for now basically saying your husband is wrong, but your husband is wrong. We are not allowed to actually say, okay, we are hiring a contract for this person. The contracting language is not even allowed. So let's say hypothetically, I need a contractor in my history office. I'm not allowed to even write that language. It has to go through contracting. I can give them ideas. I can give them tips, but I am not allowed to basically say, I want to hire, and then like put your first name as the first letter. Like I can't even write in code, right? So if it's written, even though it can have very specific needs, that's all it is. It's just specific needs. It is not written specifically for someone.
Okay,
So
that's good to know.
If you see something, just fire off the application. You lose nothing but the time required to apply.
Awesome. And then I was gonna say, Daniela, weren't you in our class in 6900 last fall? Or 2 falls ago, actually.
2 falls ago, yeah. Well, no, yeah, 2 falls ago.
Okay, it's nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Yeah, me, you, and Gustavo were in that class with you, and we saw you. Were like, wait a minute, we know what that is.
Daniela, she applied for my intern,
and I got rejected.
And she was number 2.
Oh, nice.
I was rejected.
Now, in all fairness to Daniela, the person she lost to had a BA and an MA from Harvard. And he wrote in his application, which Daniela did not write, that he wanted to be a historian working for the federal government. So
museums.
Yeah, and she wrote, I want to work for museums, and I do not control the museum.
Gotcha.
So, Daniela, in spite of that, was my number 2. So had that guy turned that down, or, which was the other thing I was hoping, was I'd get authority to hire number 2, I was going to hire Daniela. So I've stayed in touch with her ever since. But see, notice how Daniela is mentioning things she got rejected from, not where she's at right now with my help, which is what, Danielle? You're getting, what are those things called? They're fun. We like them.
The
interviews?
what? Oh yeah, interviews. Yes, I'm getting plenty of interviews right now due to the help of Dr. Doidge helping me with my resume, my cover letter, and everything.
Awesome.
I am currently the collections curator here at the Mission and Foundation. However, the idea is to go further beyond that, you know, and with Dr. Doidge's help, I'm going to get there. We became really close friends, and sometimes we talk smack to each other, but we're really close friends.
Yes. So here's the great thing about working for, or even knowing a historian like myself, is that because I'm tied to things like mission, vision, programs, policies, I advised Daniela to take her cover letter and basically told her, hey, there's nothing wrong with this that a total and complete rewrite can't fix. And so we completely rewrote that cover letter around how she would tie to the mission, vision, programs, plans, and how her career would thread through the organizations that she was applying to. And sure enough, the interviews started to come. Daniela is a great interviewer, so I'm not worried about her getting a job. In fact, she's actually being flown up to Oregon because she's one of 3 candidates now for a final interview.
Awesome.
This is going to work out. It's just a matter of, and again, forgive me, Jeremy, this is not a shot on you, but this is what universities do, right? They train you on how to be history majors. They train you on how to get a graduate degree in history. They don't necessarily train you on how to translate that to working in the field. And that's where someone like me comes along and can be very, very helpful, because I have to all day long translate regulation and code into what in the world they actually want done. Because they'll tell me in a memo, this is how you have to, work as a federal historian. But then I have to take that gobbledygook and say, okay, this is what they really want the end result to be. So it's that kind of language, skill that I have, and that you all need to make certain you're working on in order to get access to the places that Daniela now has access.
Got a quick question.
That's great. Yeah, I just wanted a quick, Terry's gonna have a question, but I think I just wanted to amplify what Dr. Doidge has said, which is as you move from the seminar setting, the classroom setting, into professional interviews and that kind of thing, getting in touch with somebody like Dr. Doidge, who's in this world and is also reviewing lots and lots of applications, is very, very important. Because seeing just that volume of applications and understanding what separates one out from the other is great. We also talked about informational interviews. So this is a really good sort of setting for that as well. Sorry, Terry, go ahead.
I have worked as a contractor for 9 years for the federal government, parent company or organization for the Office of Regional Affairs. And I found I got my job by an invitation. I was kind of a utility player, and I was going to training classes for this organization, and they offered me a job. I turned the one down and then asked about that job later, never got it. Another one popped up, they offered it to me, and I accepted it. It took me to some real interesting parts of the world, but the gist of mine, my clearances ran out in 15, and I wouldn't do that kind of work now. I'm way too old. But is there jobs with different organizations? Say a work at home, it's not so much for the money. I started at GS7. I'm just or 6, I don't care. I just love history. I liked knowing the things. I had been cleared to a TSSCI in the past, held it, and I imagine it wouldn't be difficult to regain it. But how do you find those type of jobs? Is there even, because I'm getting my master's in history, is there even a position for someone like me with different, I've got 30 years active in reserve in the military. That's how I got the other job. And so how would I look into that? How would I go about it? I was lucky enough to just be offered the job.
Right. So, you're going to go on, again, keep in mind right now, we're in a special time period where hiring actions are not being done.
Yes.
So we have to start with that. Okay. But if we assume that at some point or another things will return to normal, and they should, I can't tell you when, because that I'm not privy to. But what you'll want to do is you'll want to make certain that you have your SF50 uploaded to USA Jobs and your job code. And Jeremy, if you don't mind, if I could get you to type something in, go ahead and type in 0170. When you go on USA Jobs, you are going to type in 0170. That is all historian positions. Okay. Right now, you're not going to see many. But again, once stuff opens up again, you will see historian positions pop up for that. And you will see for Terry, for yourself, you'll see, because you have an SF50, you can apply against veterans preference, and you can apply as a master's student probably against GS7, GSA, not GS9 level. You can still apply for GS11 through GS15. It just matters that at that point, it depends on supervisor experience, who you're competing against, the agency, yada yada yada. So I mean, yeah, there'll be a role for you. It's just a matter of how the market looks. And I'm not going to lie to any of you. Right now, it doesn't look too good. That's why I kind of pitched that whole idea of FBI careers and NSA careers and all those other things, because it's just going to be difficult. But yeah, I mean, like that's going to be, I think, my best advice. Alternatively, Terry, if you're fine being still a contractor, Booz Allen, Leidos, Deloitte, all those jazz, you definitely want to make certain that you're looking for historian or analyst type positions, because once you're in their system, because some of them are so huge, especially like a Booz Allen, right, that they can shift you around, and they can, as long as you're willing to be mobile, they'll shift you to, from one history position to another history position, based on need. Work from home right now, not so much. We were all called back into the office, and that's across the board. So the only places that do not have return to office right now are contractors with special authorities where they don't have to have it, and basically places like the Library of Congress where they don't fall under the executive branch. The Library of Congress is a great place, though, for all of you to apply, because again, they do historian-like things. And they're actually, if you typed in 0170 into USA Jobs right now, you pull up a job for the Library of Congress. It's a GS13. It is basically to be their historians, like an agency historian position. So, I mean, that's the other thing is, think in terms of agencies you might like to work for. But right now, if I were a new job seeker and I were just looking at the playing field, I would just cast a wide net, because that's the best hope you have.
Should I, if I want to complete the program, if I'm still interested, should I actually, I have some connections still employed there. And should I, but they're incompletely, I've never heard, by the way, of a historian for different agencies and government activities other than the archivists and the Library of Congress. So could I ask them to put in a good word, or, a lot of where I got hired was word of mouth and experience. And, skill set was utmost important. So it's kind of funny. I work for the government and I don't know how to apply for it or how to get a recommendation, so to speak.
Yeah, so I mean, you can absolutely, depending on what the contract does, because that's the problem, right? Some contracts are specifically like all they do is like, let's say, civil engineering type stuff. So their job as a contractor is to worry about concrete on a base, right? They're not going to have a historian role. They're not going to necessarily know who the historian is and all that. But if you work for the right contractor, the basically personnel contracts, people that supply people to do things, not to be the wrench
That's who I
turner.
work for.
Yeah. So you go talk to them, and yeah, they might have a historian, on the staff. They might know who the historian is, and they can put in a good word. But getting the history position, like my position, good word is no, it's not going to cut it. You're going to need, a good, strong application. You're going to need to have your degree in hand. Now, again, the good news is that except for professional military education, that requires a PhD. In my field, even though I hold a PhD, you don't actually need a PhD to do what I do. You only need about 18 credit hours worth of history. So yes, 18 credit hours, in case you're all kind of like, are you kidding me? Yeah, that's actually all you need. So you can apply with a BA and you can apply with an MA. The problem is that because the career field is so bad as it is, you now are applying against PhDs like myself because they can't find work. So they're now turning to my types of jobs and saying, well, I can work for you. And obviously my advantage over them is not only do I have the PhD, but the person from even, let's say, Harvard, who studied the social history of the swimming pool can't hold a candle to the guy who actually studied military history because he understands how the military works. So I'm going to beat those people out. And that's what the military needs. It doesn't need that. But yeah, I mean, absolutely, all of you should be thinking in those terms. And if you have the SF50 that shows that you are a veteran, use the veteran's preference to try and get a leg up. Again, I only see CSUSB right now, so I don't know what's
well, being an old warrant officer with probably 8 years of overseas time, would that, aside from a disabled vet?
Yeah, that's going to help you. Yeah, you're going to get vet's preference. Yeah, as long as you apply in the GS system, you're going to get vet's preference. Absolutely. It would apply even if you applied right now, I think, to the Library of Congress. So that GS 13 position right now. Yeah. But I mean, what the final arbiter will be, I couldn't tell.
I get beat out. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks, and no problem, Charles. You're having trouble with your connection there, but we've got I've entered those codes in the chat there.
Yeah, I can see them.
And Charles noted a cultural affairs one, which could be relevant as well, I think, depending on what position.
Yeah, and if you're willing to be broad, like your 1420 series, so 1420, that's like your archivist series. And then the other one, this is the big one for all of you, if you're willing to basically be historian adjacent, is 0308. That is records management. That is federally regulated. So when we talk in terms of jobs that need to exist, records managers absolutely need to exist. Now, they're not historians in the traditional sense, right? Because they don't look at the records and then maybe say, okay, this is what they tell me. Their job is to manage the records, is to basically be somewhat similar to an archivist, funnel the records to where they need to go, dispose of the ones that are transitory, keep the ones that are permanent. But they are federally required by law to exist, whereas historians are more nice to have. Records managers are vital to have, and every agency has them. Every agency. Not every agency has a historian. Every agency has records managers. Many have multiple. So 0308 is a great job code to be aware of moving forward as you begin to, make your applications.
And the archive one was
14. It's like, I think 1420. It's either 1410 or 1420. And that one's a weird one because it's like 1420, then 1421, then 1422. So it's going to be kind of a series of them because it's basically covering a skill set. Because at the lowest, let's say is 1420. Let's assume I'm right. 1420 will be you're a GS7 level archives technician. You're just starting out in your career. Whereas 142022 or whatever, 1422, that'll be like a senior level archivist and all of that. So an MA in history would have to basically say, okay, well, I'm willing to apply and then, get the training necessary to be an archivist. And you'd start low and then you just kind of work your way up.
This is great, and thanks. I think Charles has some experience in this work as well, and he's definitely endorsing these codes. I also appreciate you talked about all these websites, so many websites, all the websites. But I appreciate it, and for the gang here, Dr. Doidge gave me a list that includes the ones that I put in the chat, and I will share those out with the group afterwards. So you'll have that full list there. We also had National Park Service workers and California State Park and Historic Site workers earlier in the term. So I think there is some level of awareness of the need to kind of boldly navigate all of these websites and all of these different forums. So I hope you all are sort of taking note of this. And again, I'll share out the list of websites, the sort of master list. But indeed, I think, and I think it was Dr. Adam Dean from the National Park Service, who said something very similar to what Dr. Doidge is saying, and that is that kind of the assumption that there's a drop-off rate when you just get this overwhelm of all the websites in the universe coming at you and trying to keep up with this, it becomes a little bit too much. So if you go in with that understanding that you're going to have to sit there and spend some time navigating these websites, allocate that time and make sure that you dedicate that time. As Dr. Doidge said, it's very, very different from the kind of qualitative work that we're doing here. So understanding that clerical aspect of the work and knowing what you're in for, hopefully, as I'm sure Charles is very, very aware of, when we did our law school session.
If you apply to the CIA, you will be in for a 4-hour application.
Wow.
So, I mean, it is no kidding. And then even if you get it, they're going to bring you on site and they're going to interview you over in Langley. And it's going to be a reasonably lengthy interview, not basically to check your background, right? It's just to check, like, you've made it to step 2. Do they want, to now introduce you as to whatever, you want to do? So like these can be very involved processes. I mean, I've been blessed. Basically for me, it's been a Zoom interview and it's like, yeah, that guy seems nice. Let's bring him on, and that's how my world has been. It's rarely been the whole, like, well, let's fly him out kind of thing, but just be aware, like, yeah, this is an involved process. So the only thing I can tell you is that you must care. You have no choice but to care because there's just simply too many applicants out there right now. And I'm sorry, all, but I don't see that changing anytime soon because the world just is all about its STEM. It doesn't, it's all about its side hustles. It doesn't value necessarily what the historian can give. And the federal government's most recent shift doesn't indicate to me that it's going to shift anyway, but further in that direction, because all you keep hearing about is, AI and how we can basically eliminate personnel and just allow this other thing to take over what you do. And no amount of me screaming from the top of my lungs and saying, no, but AI can't do everything that I do is going to change the fact that someone who firmly believes in AI and is a decision maker is going to take us down that route. So the only thing I can tell you all is to broaden your net and to basically say, well, I can do other things besides just simply history. Not that there's anything ignoble about that. It's just simply the way of things. So if you love this craft, my advice to you is you better damn well really friggin' love it, because it can't love you back. I'm one of the lucky ones.
Question again, when you talked about the application, which I can relate to, do they also, or do they just see something in me have that 300 question psych eval that 20 of us took in a room, and so many repetitive questions, you know, do you hate your mom? And 40 questions later, how long do you hated your mom? You know, it was kind of ridiculous, I thought. But do multiple organizations ask that kind of thing?
They can. I mean, nowadays, most organizations go streamlined. Most organizations wait till they know they want you before they then basically determine, like, hey, at nighttime, do you like wake up and howl at the moon?
Well, this was after we were hired. But we were only hired for an addition, a certain amount of time for training. And then the first day we were there, we took this test and it lasted 5 hours.
Well, the thing is that, you know, it's quite easy to sit there and say, okay, well, FBI, CIA, DOD, right? Like, they're going to have involved processes. It makes sense. But keep in mind, the US Mint has a historian, right? And they, I mean, obviously they care if you hate your mom, right? Because everyone wants you to love your mom, but they're not going to ask you about hating your mom so much, because in order to work at the US Mint, you don't need the kind of clearances that you need to work where I work. So it's varied. It depends where you work. You said yourself that you had a gentleman from the National Park Service. I guarantee you, he was not asked any kind of in-depth types questions to work at the National Park Service. That's not a shot on him. It's just simply they don't have to go through that rigmarole. And most federal agencies, despite how we're depicted in the media, are actually quite busy. So we don't have the time to spend on, you know, is this person sucky or not? We just like, can you do the job and can you integrate into the mission? And that's why you need to write your cover letters that way and factor yourselves into that kind of guideline. Because if you don't, then you just basically are another person with a degree who's trying to say, hey, hire me because I'm interested in working for you. That's everyone. You know, you have to write the cover letter in such a way as to say, why do you matter? And how are you going to advance an agency's mission, you know, purpose, goals, vision? And what's more, on top of that, you should be thinking that way even in the private sector. Because why would, you know, I don't know, Goldwater Sachs hire anyone but the best? You need to convince them that they are a good investment of their time and resources into you, because you will professionally develop and personally develop while getting them to the goal that they seek. So read into the job app and use your history powers of persuasion for good. I tell everyone I meet that asks me, you know, like, well, what does a federal historian do? What does even the historian do? Is I said, we are in fact Jedi. So I'm going to make the Star Wars reference again, right? We, like Luke Skywalker, go to that dark place, Dagobah, where we commune with the dead, and we come back empowered by knowledge. And then when anyone says, okay, so wait, you really think you're Jedi? I'm like, yes, shut up or I'll force choke you. That is the end of the joke, but you all need to be thinking that way. Persuasion, persuasion, persuasion. That is what history has given you that other crafts have not. It has given you the ability to make the case for not only a historical event, an idea, change over time, but yourself. Be your own best advocate, because no one else will do it for you. No letter of reference will sell you as well as you will sell yourself to an agency if you're thinking about it the right way. That's what this is all about. And that's what you're going to have to do if you're going to have to set yourself apart from any other historian. And like I said, keep in mind, no shot on any of you, but you are now competing with some of the best in history, because they will beggingly take a job working for me as a contractor. I had an MA in Harvard. Why? Because you can't get a job. Right? This is how difficult it is out there. I had 40 applicants. So Daniela was number 2. Yeah, don't sell yourself short. You were number 2 of 40. It'd be tough out there. And 28 of them were viable. 28 of them I could have taken. Easy.
Can I just say, when he mentions being very specific, targeted to the mission statement and all the visions and stuff, it is so true. If you really want to stand out from other competitors applying for the same position, that's really important to take in. Me, before I met Dr. Doidge, I was getting 0 to none. After I met him, he helped me modify my cover letter, modify everything to what the institution wanted. And it could be, again, it could vary from different institutions, but I modified it to that specific, you know, mission statement, their reasoning, their vision and all that. And it helped me. And it's because of that, it has been able to put me in situations, in good situations too, where I didn't think it was possible for me to get there. That's all I'm saying.
Thanks, Daniela. Yeah, I think this is really important in this particular example that you both described in terms of knowing the position you're applying for and making sure that you include that in your cover letter and the fit question. Erin, jump in.
Yeah, real quick. Do you know if there are any positions currently at Edwards or even anywhere around this area currently? Up
So
High Desert?
at Edwards right now, your best bet is going to be to take a look on Indeed.com, look for
Okay.
contracting. Have your husband even talk to the 412 contracting office
Okay.
and basically say, hey, you know, what are the companies that have the largest contracts at Edwards? And then
Okay.
just bookmark them. Because at this point, we are in a hiring freeze.
Right.
We're waiting for exemptions. I don't know when they're going to come. So if you went to like one of the websites is there, I think it's Air Force Civilian Careers, it actually shows a map of the US.
Okay.
And before it would show all the bullet points in orange of where they were hiring. Now the map is a ghost. There's no bullet points anywhere. There's no pips on the map because everything's frozen. We know at some point that eventually we're going to be able to hire again. What we know right now is that we are trying to decrease the DoD by about 5 to 8%. That's a lot of people because we have about 800,000 people in the DoD, and we're trying to lose between 5 and 8% of that. Okay, well, 10% of 800,000 people be, 80,000. So it's a significant number of people we're trying to get out of the DoD before we can hire again. There is a memo by the president, and it's an executive order, and it says that basically the way that they want future hiring to work for the government is that you need to let go of 3 or 4 for every 1 you hire.
Right.
That's tough. That means that we're going to try and basically shrink the government by, if that left on interminably, right? The federal government right now is about a little more than 2 million people in terms of its employment. If you let that number stand, time immemorial, right, it would get it down to 500,000.
Right.
So it's a significant shift. I don't know how things are going to shape up. So my advice is, keep your eyes open, check every Monday or Thursday, because some things sometimes have a short suspense. And right now go contracting, because
I was even looking at GA and even like just scheduling positions, anything just to get, my name in the door just to move up eventually too.
Yeah. So ask him to ask the contracting officer who the biggest contracts are on base. And then I'm not telling you to take a janitor position, but I'm just using take the janitor position, because once you're in the door, move around.
Right.
The other one to look at, if you're Edwards specific, and again, I don't know when they're going to hire next, but the program, it's a little known program, it's called Starbase.
Okay.
Write it down, keep an eye on it. Starbase, its job is to bring students who live locally, so typically Lancaster, but Cal City, wherever, onto base and teach them engineering, science, math, and what the base does. And it's a long-standing program that's very similar to Head Start. It's a little known program throughout the entire Department of Defense, and it's usually localized. So it's odd because you'll see a Starbase program going on in Maryland, but there won't be a Starbase website where it's like, well, where are they hiring all over the place? So it feels like a decentralized run program. But I encountered them and they were hiring a while back. I don't know, if and when they'll hire again, but I believe that their positions are government. It's just a different kind of methodology.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Erin. Thanks, Mike. So this idea of fitting the application to the position has been a theme that we've had over the last 10 weeks or so. And we noted in this particular example that we talked about the importance of that. When you're reviewing an application, Mike, what do you look for specifically in terms of fit for a given position? Is it always specific to the position that you're reading for, that you're hiring for, or are there sort of levels of awareness or engagement that you see that sort of alert you to the viability of a candidate?
Right. That's a great question. So, I mean, I'm going to be a little bit unique. I'm sure everyone is in this respect. The one that I love to see is I'm a bit of an optimist. I want to see the person actually have a goal. So I want them to see a goal that aligns with my mission, or at least something that my mission could support, so that I can basically get them to where they want to be. So the way to think about how I view resumes is I'm like almost like if Mr. Rogers like reviewed resume, right? Like I want to be your neighbor. I want you to want to be here. I want you to want to work for me. I want you to want to work for the agency. I want you to want things for yourself. So I love that when I look at a resume. But I'm not going to lie, there's going to be people out there that, I mean, all they're concerned with is the agency itself. Like as if someone was hiring, someone who was going to work there and never leave. I never think that way. I think in terms of growth, because why would anyone want to come work for my agency as a GS7 and then just stay there forever, right? Like that's the beginning of their career. You students are at the beginning of your career. You should want to use my agency to then propel you forward and therefore leave. So that's how I tend to think about things. But that's because I myself have a kind of hardwired ambition. And also because I just want what's best for people, because I'm more people centric than probably other hiring managers are. I have run into really good people in the government. So I typically have found people that share my point of view. But obviously, all of you have existed in this world. You're very well aware that there are toxic people and toxic leaders in this world. I don't even call them leaders. They're just managers, right? And all they want is they want you to check the boxes, and basically do the job and then go home at the end of the day so that they can go home in the day and do the same. So I would always tell you to check the boxes. Always, 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 because if you can't do the job, why are you applying? Your job is to sell yourself that you can do the job. But I would, in fitting in, basically sell it in such a way so that it's going to propel the agency forward, it's going to propel you forward, and that basically everyone benefits. Because especially in history offices in the federal government, we're small. None of them are that large. There are some centers that are huge, but even they are going to pale in comparison to most federal agencies. So like the U.S. Army Center for Military History is a good example. It's pretty big. It's probably got somewhere in the ballpark of between 50 and 100 historians that work there. But even they have to concern themselves with, well, do these historians get along with each other through the various respective branches that they handle? So, absolutely, you need to basically come in as a team player, as a collaborator. You need to come in. You need to fight as well against biases that they're going to have against your generation. I don't myself typically hold them, but you all need to be, very well aware that, managers are going to see you as someone who's just going to stare at your phone all day. That, basically experiences life through TikTok, that, has unrealized, kind of potential, that doesn't, see the world the way it ought to be seen, that kind of crap. Right? You have to battle those biases too. Same as I had to battle the biases. I'm a Gen X person, right? That had to battle the biases of like, well, I'm sarcastic. I am sarcastic, right? But I'm not nihilist. So you have to do all that as well. It's a really difficult balance to strike in a cover letter. My advice to you when you're writing that cover letter is to always be talking about what you can be doing. Always be talking about what you add. I had to even go through this a little bit with Daniela. Don't talk about what you can't do. Don't talk about your limitations. Okay. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. What matters is what can you contribute? What can you add? What can you work through? Especially with a military atmosphere, we tend to be stoic. Okay. We don't face problems. We face challenges, right? Because a problem is something that can't be resolved. The problem is a woe is me. A challenge is something that you rise to overcome. I know it sounds stupid. It sounds silly, but that's how we're hardwired to think. And that's how all my military colleagues and all the people I work with, and keep in mind, I exist at the level where basically I'm the equivalent of a full bird colonel. Okay. So I'd be the equivalent of an 06. All those people, that's what they have to do. They're told, okay, you got to shave 5 to 8% of your force and still operate. They're saying, yes, sir, can do. And then they go try and do it. That's honestly a great way to write your cover letter too. Like, don't lie, but I mean, come off as positive, as someone who can handle challenges, as someone who's interested in growth, professional and personal, as someone who wants to help build and create. That's like the, that's the person that's just, even if you're going to serve under someone who's not so great, at least you'll come off as the best variant of yourself. And that's really all you can control anyway. And everything else you're just going to have to let be.
Wrapping up on a stoic note, indeed. I love it, Mike. Thank you. You've given us a lot to talk about. I will share that master list of links for everybody to navigate, to get to jump into the weeds, and to make your way through that. This has really been a great set of insights about a very particular kind of historian. Terry loosely alluded to Liam Neeson there with a very specific set of skills, very specific skill set. I like it. It's really been very enjoyable to learn a little bit about it. So thank you, Daniela, for recommending Mike, Dr. Doidge, to join us today. It's always great to catch up with you, Daniela, and really wonderful to meet you virtually, Mike. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, no, pleasure. You don't even need to do the email. Yes, go ahead, share this, widely. Jeremy, let's absolutely stay in touch. If you have students that are looking down this specific path of work and whatnot, you can give them, I'll get it to you, my personal email. They can reach out to me, find me on LinkedIn, whatnot. I help just to help, because I once sat where all you did. And the reason I hold the job I hold is because basically people took their time out of their day and life that they didn't have to help me, and they chose to help me. So I do pay that forward. That's the kind of logic. So just, take from that what you will, reach out to me, and however I can be a helper, okay? All my best to you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mike. It's been a delight. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you both.
Thanks, everybody.